Okay, so to start today, I want to try something a little different. I want you to maybe close your eyes for a second, if you aren't driving, of course.
Yeah, right. Or operating heavy machinery.
Exactly. I want you to try and find a very, very specific memory. And I'm not talking about the moment you fell in love. And I'm definitely not talking about, the heat of physical lust. Those are loud feelings.
They are. This is something else, the prequel.
Yes, the prequel, that's a perfect word for it. The split second before all of that. That tiny, almost invisible moment where the whole dynamic in a room just shifted, but nobody else noticed.
It's that moment you went from just being there to wanting.
And that's exactly our mission on this deep dive. We are stripping back the emotion to look at the machinery.
It's a powerful place to start because we almost never analyze it while it's happening. We're usually just drowning in the feeling.
Right. And our guide for this exploration is a really fascinating piece of writing. It's titled LustScenes, The Architecture of Desire. Now, unlike some of the really dense academic papers we sometimes tackle, this reads much more like a story. But it dissects human interaction with this surgical precision.
It does. It's almost like a meditation on the mechanics of a single look. But you're right. The narrative style is deceptive. It offers a very rigorous framework for how intimacy is built in our minds.
The Architecture of Desire. I mean, it's such a heavy title. It implies desire isn't just this lightning strike. It's something that's built.
It has a foundation, load-bearing walls.
And blueprints. So today we're going to read those blueprints. We're going to try and break down how the mind takes a nothing moment, a glance, a pause, and, builds a cathedral around it.
And hopefully by the end, we can give you the language to describe a moment you've probably lived through a dozen times but never quite understood.
Yeah.
And the place to start is the source's core idea, which honestly, it contradicts how most people think about attraction.
How so?
The text argues that desire isn't primarily a physical event. Not at the start, anyway. It's almost entirely a mental one.
That feels a bit counterintuitive. You know, if I ask someone how they know they desire someone, they talk about the body.
Sure. Pulse racing, palms sweating.
The butterflies, all of that.
Right. But the source argues those are just symptoms. They're downstream effects. The cause, the actual starting point, is a cognitive event.
A shift in perception.
Exactly. And the way the text describes the arrival of this feeling is so specific. It says desire doesn't, kick down the door.
I remember the line, it didn't announce itself, it didn't rush.
It's stealthy.
And the phrase that really stuck with me, I think this is the Trojan horse of the whole concept, is where the author writes, it arrived quietly, disguised as curiosity.
Disguised as curiosity. That is the critical mechanism right there.
Okay, so why is that so important?
Well, think about it. Curiosity is safe. It's socially acceptable. You could be curious about a piece of art, a book title, or a person across the room, and it just feels benign.
It's low stakes.
Very low stakes. If I'm just curious about you, I haven't promised anything, I'm not vulnerable.
I'm just observing, not interested yet.
Precisely. But the source suggests this is a trick our mind plays. You let curiosity in the front gate because it seems harmless. But inside that horse, desire is just waiting to unpack itself.
So curiosity is the vehicle. What's the ignition? The text points to a very specific trigger. The narrator says, I noticed the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention.
Ah, the unobserved observation. That's a classic shift in power dynamics.
But why is that the trigger? Why is catching someone looking at you so much more powerful than just, say, having a normal conversation?
Because it breaches social protocol. When we're talking, we're performing. I'm presenting the me I want you to see.
Sure.
But if I catch you studying me, when I'm not performing, I realize I'm being seen as an object of interest, not just a participant in a conversation.
It makes it active instead of passive.
It implies a secret. If you look at me while I'm looking, that's communication. If you look at me while I'm not looking, that's study. It's data collection.
And when the narrator catches her doing it, the text says, and suddenly, I was.
Such a great line.
It is. It's so vague, but so heavy. Suddenly I was. What? Hooked.
Suddenly I was aware. Suddenly I was online.
Oh, okay.
Before that, the narrator just existed in the room. But once they realize they are the object of someone else's secret focus, the dynamic flips.
The curiosity about why she was looking becomes the trap.
It snaps shut, and it's just the spark.
But a spark isn't a fire, right? You need oxygen. And this, I think, brings us to the most technical part of the source, what it calls the architecture of the pause.
This is where we get into the real structural elements. The text lists these very specific ingredients that have to exist for desire to really solidify.
What are they?
It lists a look, A pause. A silence that lingers too long.
Lingers too long. Okay, let's drill down on that. Because it feels subjective, but we all instinctively know what that means, don't we?
We do. Humans are incredibly attuned to the rhythm of social interaction. It's like a dance. We know exactly how many milliseconds of eye contact are polite.
Right, and we know how long a silence should last before someone feels the need to say, so, how about this weather?
It's a script. We're all reading from it. Our brains are prediction machines. So if I look at you, my brain predicts you'll look away or speak within, say, 1.5 seconds. That's the normal pattern.
So what happens when that pattern breaks?
When the silence lingers too long, it creates a prediction error in the brain. The pattern is disrupted, and that disruption creates a huge spike in attention. Your brain goes, wait, something's wrong here. Why aren't they looking away? Why aren't they speaking?
And that spike is what we feel as tension.
That's the tension.
So that electricity we feel isn't necessarily magic. It's the brain kind of freaking out because the social contract has been violated.
In a way, yes. The source calls this the threshold. It says there's a moment before desire becomes real. That silence is the threshold.
It's a border crossing.
Oh, it's a border crossing. If you break eye contact or make a little joke, you retreat back to safety. You stay in the friend zone or the colleague zone, but if you stay in that silence,
You step over the cliff.
you enter the space where what's unspoken becomes much louder than what's spoken.
Let's try to visualize this for everyone listening because abstract concepts are hard. Okay, imagine you're at a dinner party. It's loud, forks are clinking, people are laughing.
Standard scene.
You reach for the salt shaker at the exact same time as someone else. Your hands touch. Normally you pull back, you mutter sorry, you grab the salt. The whole thing takes half a second.
Right, the script.
But imagine you don't pull back. Imagine your hands touch and you both just stop. You lock eyes. And instead of sorry, there's just silence. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds.
That third second, that's the architecture we're talking about.
Exactly. The noise of the party just fades out. The air in the room feels denser.
That density is the cognitive load of everything that's not being said. You're both suddenly acknowledging we are not talking about the salt anymore.
It's kind of terrifying, actually.
That is, it's high risk.
Yeah.
But that is where the source makes its big pivot. We've had the look, we've had the pause, but now the text argues that desire isn't just a reaction to the person across from you.
This is where it says desire doesn't start in the body. It starts in the mind.
The mind is builder section. Yes.
And this is where I start to get a little skeptical or maybe just cautious because the source says we start filling in the gaps.
Filling in the gaps with fantasy.
Yeah.
That's the exact phrase.
Which implies we're just making stuff up.
Well, hang on. Look at the data you actually have in that moment. You have a look, a silence, maybe the touch of a hand on a salt shaker. That is a tiny amount of information.
It's a stick figure drawing.
It is. And the human mind abhors a vacuum. It wants a complete picture. So what does it do?
It starts painting.
It starts projecting. In psychology, this is sometimes called the halo effect, because you've had this one intense, positive moment of connection. Your brain just assumes other positive traits to fill in all those blanks.
You assume they're kind. You assume they're intelligent.
You assume they understand you in a way nobody else does.
All based on 3 seconds of silence.
Based on the feeling that silence gave you. The text says, we replay moments. We imagine conversations. We fill in the gaps. We aren't actually reacting to the complex, flawed human being in front of us.
We're reacting to the idealized avatar we're building in real time.
Exactly.
So is the source saying desire is essentially a delusion? That feels a little cynical to me.
I wouldn't say delusion. I'd say it's more of a creative act.
Yeah.
The text says, and before we realize it, we are no longer present. We are already somewhere else with them.
That displacement.
That displacement is key. You can be physically at that dinner party, but mentally, you are living in a future timeline you just invented 5 seconds ago.
That somewhere else is so seductive. It's why you see people just check out of conversations sometimes. They get that glazed look in their eyes.
They're building the castle.
Building the castle.
And the problem, or the beauty, depending on your perspective, is that the castle is custom built for you. You are the architect. So, of course, the fantasy version of this person is perfect.
They're going to say exactly what I need to hear. They're going to fill all the voids in my life perfectly.
Because you're the one writing their dialogue.
Right.
Which then raises that really uncomfortable question. Are we desiring them, or are we just desiring the story we're writing about them?
That is the danger zone. And I think that explains why the next part of the source, the aftermath, is so poignant. Because eventually the pause ends, the dinner party ends.
Reality comes crashing in.
And the text shifts from construction to memory. It says that first look, it doesn't fade.
And then it becomes the scene you replay long after everything ends.
Why is that? Why does that first moment have so much staying power?
Well, think about it. If you actually get into a relationship with this person, you learn the truth. You learn that they chew loudly, or they have credit card debt, or they get cranky when they're tired.
The avatar dissolves. The real messy person steps in.
Right. And usually that reality is messier and far less exciting than the fantasy you built in that silence. But the memory of that first moment,
It stays pure.
it's hermetically sealed. It was built entirely of potential. It can't be ruined by reality because it exists outside of it. It exists in that somewhere else.
So we replay it. It becomes this ghost that sort of haunts the real relationship. We use it to measure the present, which seems unfair.
It is completely unfair. Comparing reality to a fantasy is a losing game. But the source offers a resolution here that I find incredibly healthy. It's a line that acknowledges the power of that memory without letting it destroy you.
Which line is that?
Some scenes live forever, but you don't have to.
But you don't have to. That distinction is, wow, that's vital.
Giving you permission to compartmentalize.
It's saying, okay, that moment was real, the feeling was real, the architecture you built was beautiful, keep the blueprints.
But don't try to live in the house.
Right. Because the house isn't there anymore. Or maybe it never really was.
It separates the experience of desire from the outcome of the relationship. We live in such a goal-oriented society. We think a feeling is only valid if it leads to marriage or, a lifelong partnership.
So if it ends, we think the initial desire was a mistake. I was so stupid, I thought there was something there.
Exactly. And this source is arguing, no, you weren't stupid, you were building. The architecture was real, even if the building didn't last. The value was in the awakening itself.
The fact that it ended doesn't make that initial spark any less of a masterpiece of the mind.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It validates the almost.
Yeah.
It validates the things that didn't work out. It frames them as part of your personal library of experiences.
Yeah.
Some scenes live forever. They're yours to keep.
So let's recap the journey. We've seen the arrival curiosity as a disguise. We've seen the mechanism, the too long silence that triggers our brain's attention.
We've seen the construction, the mind rushing in to fill the gaps with a perfect projected fantasy.
And we've seen the permanence, how that fantasy gets preserved in memory, totally separate from the messy reality of the person.
So the big question is, what's the so what? How does this help you, the listener, next time you're caught in that silence?
Well, I think typically people feel like victims of desire, I couldn't help it, it just hit me. It feels completely passive.
But if you understand the architecture, you gain agency. You realize you're an active participant. You're the one lingering in the silence. You're the one projecting all these virtues onto a stranger.
It doesn't mean you have to stop doing it. It's fun to build castles in the air.
It's incredibly fun. It's one of the best parts of being human. But maybe it just allows you to keep one foot on the ground. When you feel that rush that suddenly I was, you can take a step back and ask yourself,
okay, what am I filling in the gaps with right now?
yes,
Am I attracted to this actual person, or am I just bored and looking for a character to star in my new mental movie?
ouch. That is the hard question.
It is, but it's the necessary one. It lets you enjoy the feeling as a creative act, rather than a command from the universe that you have to obey.
It allows you to appreciate the feeling of desire for what it is, a product of your own incredible imagination, without necessarily losing your head over the person who just happened to trigger it.
So before we go, I want to leave everyone with one last thought that's been nagging at me from all this.
Okay.
We've established that we build this whole structure based on a look. We fill in the blanks, we write their script.
We do.
If the source is right, and desire is mostly us filling in the gaps with fantasy, then we have to ask, how much of that desire is actually about the other person at all?
And how much of it is just us falling in love with our own reflection?
Something to mull over the next time you catch someone looking at you when they think you aren't paying attention. Thanks for deep diving with us into the architecture of desire.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.